And that is the topic of the silver tsunami.
There you go. There you go. I'm 2 years away from that group. And so God knew what he was doing. I had to be here to actually lead this, right?
Why do you think so many families wait until the crisis hits?
Oh, out of sight, out of mind.
Aging itself is not the crisis. Being unprepared is.
We're going to need close to 9 million additional caregivers throughout just the United States to meet the demands of what's coming in the next 3 years.
I just want to say senior living communities are often supporting the family unit,
Yes.
not just the resident.
Yeah, we
and
just-
I think
yeah.
that's something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough.
Get on the wave and ride it on in.
I see what you did there.
Sure did. That's exactly right. To go get some
Come
ice
get some
cream.
ice cream, yeah. And it's so exciting to be a part of.
Amazing.
It really is. It's one of the biggest things I think we've learned.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Whether this is your first time here or you've been listening from the very beginning, we appreciate you. You know the drill. Grab your favorite cup of coffee and pull up your comfiest chair and join us right here on Around the Table with Vickie. I'm your co-host, Chris Runk, and across the table from me, as always, is your host and my mother, Vickie Runk.
Hello, everybody. We have another very exciting time that we're going to be talking about some great things that I think is going to be very informative to the public this time.
And Mom, you know, you've been at many conferences here recently, and we've also dropped this term on a past show. So we're excited to dive into it a little bit more because I think it's something that definitely needs to be talked about, and that is the topic of the silver tsunami.
There you go. There you go.
And if I was to define that, Mom, I would say it is a metaphor describing the massive demographic shift caused by the aging baby boomer generation born 1946 to 1964, reaching retirement age.
Now, I have to say something right here. I'm 2 years away from that group. And so God knew what he was doing. I had to be here to actually lead this, right?
Right?
For so long, from the very beginning of us going into the assisted living business, I have been hearing nonstop at conferences and trainings that we go to about the baby boomers. You know, and when I was 25 years old, I'm like, what in the world is a baby boomer? And the closer now that we get to this special signature time in people's lives, it truly is something that we all have to stop and pay attention to.
So you mentioned you're outside the window of the silver tsunami. So maybe the next one will be the golden tsunami.
Yeah, it'll have to be.
Something
Yes.
cool like that.
Yeah.
But America is aging fast. And here's some stats. In 2020, 1 in 6 Americans were already 65 or older. 61.2 million Americans were 65 plus in 2024. And the 65 plus population grew by almost 40% from 2010 to 2020. The fastest rate,
Yeah.
get this, since the 1880s
Wow.
for that age group.
And we're living to see it.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
So if I were to say the wave is not coming, it is here,
It's here.
what would you say?
I would say we talk about so many times on this show to get the word out to our, very active listeners that are wanting to know about aging and how to forecast this stuff. And I'd say get on the wave and ride it on in.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, because if you stay behind the wave, you're really going to going to miss out on being prepared. And part of what we talk about on the show is the time to prepare. And now you hear all these, weather forecasters whenever it's time for a storm. Talk about now you've got to prepare. And they usually give you about a week, and all of Home Depot and Sam's and Lowe's sell out of all the sandbags and different and
Water and
generators
toilet paper
and all the
and-
stuff because you're preparing for a storm that's inevitable. And it's no different with this topic. You have to be able to be prepared. What I find so interesting when we're studying this and kind of preparing for Runk and Pratt and what we're going to do with its future is that 19% of people in that age group are still working.
Yeah.
And so we've got this job force that's going to have this huge hole as well. And so when you think about that, and then so much of a percentage is actual part of the economy. And and contributes drastically to how our economy works. And so there's so many elements. And you see on the table here, if you're watching on podcast, I have 6 big pages full of notes to help me remember everything we want to talk about this. And there may have to be a part 2 to this.
There might be.
Because it's going to be so
Well,
interesting.
you're talking about being prepared, and I wrote down some ideas. And aging itself is not the crisis. Being unprepared is. And this is not just about people living longer. It's really about our systems
Right.
in the nation ready. Right. And one of those things, it affects many different aspects. And when you're talking about the hospital systems, you're talking about rehab and nursing care, assisted living, which we talk about often, memory care, in-home care, transportation, and the toll that it takes on the families.
Yeah, and we just don't have enough staff. We're going to need close to 9 million additional caregivers throughout just the United States to meet the demands of what's coming in the next 3 years. And it's fun for me because I get to see it on all levels. And so on a state level, we sit and meet about this. It's actually on the forefront of lawmakers' minds. We're looking at how to expand programs, how to get education out there. There's just not going to be enough care facilities to take care of what's coming in the industry. And a lot of it is because when COVID hit, people stopped going into building these facilities and operating these facilities. A lot of facilities have been sold to overseas investors, which produces poor care because there's no one on site really actually taking a part of the everyday business. They're just investors that have come over and bought some of these facilities. Those are things you really need to be careful when you're placing your loved ones to check into. Who owns this? Where do the dividends go? What can I expect to be put back into the community from some of their proceeds, or are they just not spending anything at all? And that ought to be a good, indicator that maybe you want to steer away from that particular facility. Now, we're all licensed and governed by different departments. For assisted living, memory care, independent living, we're all underneath the Department of Social Services. Nursing homes, skilled care is underneath the Department of Health. So you can look all of that up on those websites as well.
You just brought up a great topic, and that was COVID, right? And, senior living, that industry, healthcare, really during that 3-year time frame kind of got frowned upon.
Yeah.
It really, banks, like you mentioned, were not lending money. So construction across the country kind of came to a halt. And I would even argue even today,
Absolutely.
it still maybe is not viewed well upon it. Would that be true?
It is. It's starting to come back around, but the cost of building skyrocketed so much after 2020. Anybody that's built a house or building just a normal business, you know that it costs you twice as much after 2020 to build anything. And so getting the cost of building back down to where this industry can begin to do more expansion will be the key to helping, put more beds into the United States for our seniors as they age. And I think another really great point to talk about here that's exciting is there's so many medical, advances being made. So our seniors are living so much longer, and there's so many new drugs coming onto the forefront for Alzheimer's and dementia, which makes that disease last longer. And our seniors are more in tune with wellness and what they really want out of their latter years. And so for us as the industry leaders, we listen to them. It's like a survey. We listen to what they're looking for when they come into a care facility. We listen to what kind of programs they want. And the ones that really take that information and internalize it within their businesses will be the ones that keep a high census all the time. Back in 2025, there was 89% census ratios across the United States. And that's just a medium range. In some areas, it was more than that. I know what our numbers are, and they're continually to grow. And that's just a steady line all the time of just the same amount of beds that are turning over, but there's less amount of beds turning over. So anytime you're at that 89, 92 percentile of beds being occupied, you really are starting to get low on availability.
Mom, you mentioned that one of the biggest pain points for the silver tsunami is the workforce and the labor force, and demand for care workers is currently exploding, and that need is just going to continue. Direct care workforce will need to add, the stat is, 800,000 new jobs between 2024 and 2034.
And there's a key to what you just said, new jobs. That's not taking into account that we're constantly replacing the amount of jobs that we have now, which almost seems impossible at times. And that's not just about care communities that are freestanding. That's home health. That's sitter services, companion services. That's medical equipment companies that are bringing in the hospital beds and the oxygen tanks. It is across the board that we're going to need to train people to go into these positions to be able to keep up with the demand.
Well, you mentioned, so over that same interesting point, over that same period, the country will need to add we'll need to fill almost 10 million total direct care openings, including turnover and retirements.
Yeah, I was just in a meeting on a state level the other day, and they were talking about how that the Virginia House and Senate just passed bills to entice scholarships for nursing positions. And so I would imagine that every state sees this, and they're going to start putting programs in place to entice people to go into the field. They're going to have to.
And the largest pain point across the board is frontline caregiving, right? So those NAs, CNAs, RMAs, that's the majority of the front line.
Yeah, and it's in our industry and across the line. So registered med aids is what you're referring to as a medication gal that passes the meds all day long, and that could be true that it may be heading into the nursing home scene as well, because we don't have enough nurses on board to pass these medicines. So they could make a jump into nursing home in the future. Personal care aides are used everywhere. I mean, they're used in home health settings. They're used in doctors' offices. We haven't even mentioned the need for doctor office personnel and how we're going to need to keep up with all that. Specialists in the field like geriatric psychiatrists, neurologists, they're going to have to be looking into all these kinds of diseases. I mean, it's known that after you hit the age of 72, you have an increased need for medical care across the board. And it could be several things going on in your body. I'm like, we are not made to live forever. So it's just like an engine in the car. Things will have to be tuned up as we go. Cardiologist, I mean, things that are specific to the body as they age. And so it's very interesting to see how this is all going to turn out. But the biggest thing you can do as a family member or even an aging senior right now is to keep up with knowing where you might want to go if you need something, what kind of care you might want to bring into your home, should you need that, and have it already searched out. So when the time comes to literally jump into that scene, you're very ready. And that cuts down on anxiety. There's so much anxiety about the unknown with anything, even if you're a younger person and you're going through something. Same thing with seniors. As they begin to age, there's so much unknown. So the best thing we can do as an adult child is to guide them and give them information that they need.
Well, we've also talked about on the show that the face and the concept of senior living is changing and almost already has changed. And that is, not only are we the field is looking to hire healthcare workers, you can almost say that they need to be hospitality workers as well.
Absolutely.
In that resort style living. So that's kind of an interesting take on it. And then, experienced workers are retiring while the demand just keep rising. And organizations have to build their own pipeline, which Runke and Pratt has done.
Yeah.
But they have to build their own pipeline and not just hope that applicants show up.
That's right. And I think it's even more interesting to study about how we as business owners really need to come up to our staff and make sure that they're happy and that they're well taken care of and that we're stopping our day to go acknowledge an accomplishment. And we got to do that the other day with 3 of our staff members. And I have to say, I walked out feeling very gratified that I had taken 2 hours out of our day. I made every one of us go, did I not?
We were all
And
there, all
we
5 of
we
us. We
went
stopped
to
our day.
that's
Didn't
right.
matter what was happening. You said, be there at this time, no questions asked.
And we went into one of our facilities and were able to give 3 awards to 3 all-stars and actually honor an entire team of second shift staff. And I think when owners and leaders can do that with these care teams, you'll see a way to retain, because that's another part of this. Once you get them hired, you've got to have retention. And there has to be programs in place to keep these caregivers wanting to stay with your company and work for you. We have to fill their cup so they can then go and fill the residents' cups. And even past that is the families, because so much of our time is spent with family training and hearing their expectations and having them know what our plan is to meet those expectations. And sometimes we can't meet their expectations at all. So we have to then find another path for that resident to take. So it's constant communication with responsible parties, and we develop a team. And when that can happen, it's a beautiful thing. But sometimes it can take quite a while.
You brought up that care is kind of delivered, and it has a toll on the family. And I wrote down a point here, and that is that a massive amount of elder care is still delivered by family and friends, and that the long-term support needs are significant. About 70% of care is provided by unpaid family and friends.
Yeah, I mean, we just go back to the roots. I remember I was born in 1966, and I can remember going to my grandparents every Sunday. And we would have a meal after church, and we would hear about what they had done during the week. And it was really important that we stopped and honored our grandparents, right? I think we've kind of gotten away from that in America, but I do see a return to that because the economy is forcing people to take care of their own to a certain degree. And then, we talked in the conference the other day, the question came up is, how will I know when it's time to place my mom or dad? And one of the panelists opened up and said, if you're having to ask that question, that's how you know. And that's so true. When you've burnt out and you can't do it any longer, and the safety of your loved one that you've been caring for is in question, then there is no question. It is time to get help. So I have seen a return back to that faith, family. We're going to jump in and see what we can do because the cost is rising so high.
And that actually means that adult children and spouses are often the ones balancing. So they're balancing jobs, they're balancing kids, finances, their own health. And then you wrap in caregiving responsibilities on top of all that. And a lot of families are often emotionally unprepared and not even know what's coming. So
yeah, there's a whole nother program to the emotional part of this. We can sit and talk about stats, which we're doing today to get everybody's attention about how real the silver tsunami is. We were out in public the other day and someone asked, is it really a thing, this silver tsunami? And we said it absolutely is. And we encouraged them to go back and look it up. And it's just daunting, all of the information that's on the web about this. But the key to this is being very prepared, very educated, and pouring yourself into your family when it comes to your older family members. You're pouring into, what do you want me to do, Mom? Let's go ahead and figure this out before it even is a crisis. I think that's the key to all of it.
And you mentioned it, but just Rung and Pratt is what we do, right?
That's
Senior
right.
living. I just want to say senior living communities are often supporting the family unit,
Yes.
not just the resident.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean, I just said it, where we spend an enormous amount of time. So if I look back over 33 years and I think about how we started and what the days looked back in the early days, we spend almost 50% more of our time with families. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm really excited about the fact that someone's daughter is going to stop at the nurse's station and say, "Can you tell me, did my mom eat well today?" That lets me know this family is really invested. She's going to encourage mom to eat better tomorrow if she's not eating today. You know what that does for us? It's longevity. That resident has a reason to get up and come to the dining room because her daughter's going to check on her. So we have this family unit that's helping, push that resident towards greatness. It's not just our staff doing it, which in the early days it probably was. There wasn't near as much family involvement, but we have to allow for that. We've actually had to add staff positions just so we can keep up with the demands of the family. You were with me at a table a year ago when we did that because we saw some holes. We saw some, pitfalls along the way. So we wanted to fill in those holes. And so we added staff members and developed new positions, and they had new roles that really just catered to the families. I never thought that we would have to do that 30 some years later, but it's really not a bad thing. It just lets us know that families are involved, and that's great.
You also just said it, but planning early can reduce panic, guilt, and the rushed decisions. Why do you think so many families wait until the crisis hits?
Oh, out of sight, out of mind. That is something really hard to swallow. I mean, I know even in our personal family, we really not want to see what's coming our way. So it's very humanistic to put future problems on the back burner. Oh, she'll be better tomorrow. She's going to look better tomorrow. Her mind's going to be clearer tomorrow. This isn't a problem. I just think maybe she had a bad day. This is going to turn around. I just know it is, because nobody wants to face the fact that losing independence, losing what your home life looked like all these years. There is no mom and dad's home to go to after Sunday church anymore. We got to go see her at the facility. That's hard emotionally for us as adult children. So if it's out of sight, out of mind, we don't have to prepare for it.
I want to talk real quick because this is a really cool, interesting fact of the silver tsunami, and that is the fact that it is going to be the largest wealth transfer in U.S. history.
That's pretty.
And we're talking to the tune of, the stat says, 124 trillion will transfer through 2048.
It also lets you know a lot of prominent people that have worked really hard and built a lot of large corporations are a part of that, the wealth transfer. And then there's a lot of people that have saved and saved and saved that will, and then you got to wonder, again, about that workforce, because when that transfer happens, is the one that it's being transferred going to want to work anymore?
Yeah.
Which leaves us even more empty-handed.
And this matters in senior living because, families are passing down money, right? And then you go into, how do you navigate that? How do you prepare for how to pay for care, how to preserve assets, when to sell a home, estate planning, which we've talked about on the show, which goes a long way in this whole transfer, Medicaid planning, and inheritance expectations.
Yeah, and I would just, on the show today, recommend it that you get a really good estate lawyer to sit and go through all of mom and dad's assets and what they're able to allow you to take and what can be transferred, and tax laws and all of that good stuff. And it also is a great time for you to bond with your parents, that you both realize that we're all not going to be here forever, right? And so we share that information. That way you're going to know where the power of attorney is. If you don't have one, you're going to get it then. You're going to know if mom calls you in the middle of the night and she's been rushed to the hospital, hospital, where to go get that paperwork, or maybe you're going to keep a copy of it at your house so that when you're following behind the ambulance, you've got it when you go to the hospital to show to those people all of her advanced directives. You've planned. It's been well thought out. And this is a great time to talk about that. Get you a good estate lawyer. Make sure you're on mom and dad's account, not just as somebody that can write a check, but your name's actually on their account. Make sure you're protecting them from scams and all of the things that go on with finances during those years so that you can be effective.
Well, you're kind of hitting on it, but I just want to ask, what happens when families avoid talking about money until the emergency?
It becomes a crisis.
Yeah.
And that's when the anxiety, the fear of the unknown, guilt, I should have done this so much sooner. I've been with families in the room when it all goes downhill and they say, we should have done this so much sooner. I also have been with families that will place a loved one and they've been fighting it out of sight, out of mind, like I just said. And once they see how much better that family member is inside a care community that has routine and has trained staff and has socialization, they'll look at me and say, man, I should have done this a whole lot sooner. She's just so happy now. So those are different sides of the fences to look at this thing from.
Well, I wanted to kind of hit some main talking points as we go into the end of the show here. And that is that the silver tsunami is a crisis, but it is also an opportunity for organizations that prepare to be positioned well as they go into that era. And that is to invest in workforce training, educate families earlier, blend healthcare and hospitality, build trust and communication, create flexible service models, and that organizations that win will be the ones that can deliver dignity, safety, service, and consistency at scale. So I want to ask you, the future of senior living, if I were to say that the future of senior living belongs to providers that can care well, communicate well, and staff well, how do you feel about going into this era?
I think it's exciting. You and I and the team have even talked about things we're going to do for the community, and I don't want to spoil that because we've got some announcements coming up for the remaining of the year, but we're actually going to go into the community, and we're going to go into the churches, and we're going to have senior days, and it's going to, have to do with gathering around a table, which is what we do right here, and we're going to bring what we do inside senior living for about 2 hours to seniors in different churches in the area here. That's exciting to me because not everybody can come sit around our tables. Not everybody is there, depending on their finances, can do the things that our seniors are doing every day. So let's take it on the road. Let's put it in the churches. And so we're excited about what's coming on the show here around the table with Vickie, and we're going to give out some sweatshirts and give out some material and get into the community. And that's what's exciting for me is that, our facilities stay full and occupied, and we're blessed, and we thank our listeners and our viewers for trusting us with your parents. But as we go forward into the future, I do see growth. I do see availability. I do see a way of helping with some of the crises just from what we know, from what we do. Collaborating with different organizations, which we're already doing, the Salvation Army and some of the different organizations that we're donating to and making sure they have different things that they need. Donated a hospital bed this morning. So I'm excited about the possibility of just the knowledge that we carry within this company, reaching out into the community for those that don't have the information.
And I think it's one thing to bring up too is you think about how, seniors as they age, they need more help, right? So if I were to just say to care for your neighbor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as a general, your community, you as a humanity,
Right.
care for your neighbor and maybe be a little bit more attentive to, we're getting ready to face the largest aging boom that's ever happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a heart at all and you're going outside your door and you're getting ready to get in your car and you know somebody around you is elderly, just make friends with them. Just develop trust to where if something does go wrong, they won't be afraid to ask for help from you because you just might just save a life.
Well, Mom, I want to end the show with a closing thought here, and that is, well, first off, we had a great discussion,
We did.
and I hope we brought a lot of information to our listeners. But the question isn't whether the demographic shift will affect us. It already is. The question is whether we are ready to meet it.
That's exactly right. And if you have any questions, VickieTalk.com. We'll try to answer those questions on air as much as we can or write back to you personally. Listen, everybody, I want you to know, don't let this scare you. Be informed, be ready. Aging is not a burden to society. It's a call for society to rise to the moment with wisdom, compassion, and preparation. Boy, if that's not true from what we've heard today. We're so excited about setting and going through all of the details with you about aging, bringing new information to the table for you that will help you along your way. Until next time, I'm Vickie, and we're all right here around the table. Have a great week.